So I think the fact that like Leah Williamson, the Lionesses captain, actually suffers, and she's come out recently to say that. And I think it's so important that these figures show to people, you know, it is normal. Women suffer with this every single day. And being an athlete, it is very hard, because you know that when you're on your, like, having your menstrual cycle, your performance in sport is lower anyway. But having it where you're physically can't get out of bed, and it genuinely is really debilitating.
Welcome back to another episode of Georgeonsports with me, your host George, and as you can see on the screen, they're wearing the GB tops, wearing it with pride. It's Kellie, Britt and Grace. GB ladies, flag football, how are we?
Yeah, we're good, thank you.
Yeah, all good, thanks.
Right, we're going to get straight into it, and the first thing that I want to ask you guys, why flag football? There are so many sports out there. There's so many different sports that you could have picked up, you could have played. Some of you may have played other sports beforehand. But Britt, I'm going to start with you. Why flag football?
Why flag football? I always wanted to play football, just in general. I watched it on television. I threw the ball outside with the neighbors in my family and was never able to play it. We weren't allowed to play tackle football at my schools. Flag football was not an option. Whether that was grade school, high school, college. So when that opportunity was presented after all those years of school, I just kind of took it and ran with it. I mean, the strategy behind it, right? I play quarterback, so I've always liked throwing. I played softball in college. So the strategy behind it, I think anybody can really play it. There's so many different formats of it, at least here in the United States, that, you know, you always kind of get different opportunities to play with different people, different formats. It's social, like the amount of people I've met, most of my closest friends are from flag football at this point. And it gives you the opportunity to continue to play as an adult, where at a high level, obviously at a national level, where you don't really get that in a lot of other sports at this time. So that's kind of why for me.
And Kellie?
I actually kind of fell into playing flag football. So they came and into my primary school and did like a PE taster session. And my sister's year group, she's a couple years older than me, did it first, and then it come down to mine. And we both sort of just tried it, really, really enjoyed it. It was always really sporty. And we had some great coaches come, and they just made it really, really fun. And then they gave us the opportunity to take that outside of school and join a club as well. So it was something different, something exciting. So we just went along, tried it out, and then from 7 years old, I haven't looked back.
Nice. And Grace?
So mine kind of leads a little bit into Kellie. So I've always played sport when I was younger, and then Kellie and her sister came into my secondary school. So when I was 14, I think, and did like a few taster sessions. I absolutely hated it when I first started. And then, yeah, it just kind of led into that, really. Never looked back since.
Yeah. So Grace and Kellie, it sounds like you guys were exposed to the game because someone else had showed you. Like Kellie, you mentioned someone came into the school, and Grace, you mentioned you joined because of Kellie. And I don't know if you've seen, but obviously the Jets and the Bears have just launched a new flag league for girls here in the UK. And it seems that what they have just done in terms of putting on a showcase of the sport is the same way that you guys got involved. So it does seem to be working. But Britt, I'm going to come back and cycle back to you. You're wearing the GB top. You've got the American accent. Explain to people what's going on there.
So yeah, my father is British, and I worked at the English FA while I was in law school. And so in order to do that, I went ahead and got my UK passport. And then I played, you know, here in the US for years. And my father actually works with NFL flag group, and so does Phoebe, who is one of our teammates. And they met at one of those events. I'm sure my dad is the one that brought it up that I played flag football, connected with Phoebe, thankfully. And that is how I got connected to the GB team, thankfully.
Lovely. All right. Grace, you've obviously played the game for a while. I think you play for is it the Cougars as well? Is it Kingston Cougars you play for?
Coventry Cougars, yeah.
Coventry Cougars, forgive me. Okay. And I think you do as well, Kellie, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Grace, if you had to explain to someone the best thing about flag football, what is that going to be? We're going right into the deep end. The best thing about flag football, what is that to you?
That's hard. To be fair, within, like you mentioned, our club team, we're all best friends as well. Like Brittany mentioned earlier, a lot of friends happen within the sport. So that's definitely one. And the ability to travel with it as well is amazing. We've played in some wicked countries.
Yeah, I figured you'd go that way. I have seen you guys have played abroad. That's one of my questions, and I'm going to circle back to that in a moment. But Kellie, would you say similar or slightly different for you in terms of the best thing about the sport?
Yeah, so my family actually set up the Coventry Cougars. Me, my sister, my mum, my dad. So it was kind of a family affair. Yeah. And I think for us, it's always kind of been a family environment. And like Grace said, we're literally best friends. We travel everywhere, even like out of sport. We do everything together. And I think if we didn't have in common flag football, we're kind of like, I would describe us as like best friends, but we're so different. And we probably wouldn't have connected if we didn't have flag football. And I think for me, it's that flag football is for everybody and there's a position for everybody.
Nice. I mean, I wasn't expecting you to say that, to be fair. That's pretty impressive that your family set up the team. That's pretty impressive. Britt, talk to me. What's the best thing about the sport? What is the best thing?
What is the best thing about the sport? I come from, I guess, the QB perspective, and I love the strategy behind it. There's strategy in every sport. Again, I played soccer and softball, but just to be able to call routes, read a defense, and you're kind of playing chess, right? And you get to play it each down. At soccer, you kind of have an idea of what the other team's going to do and how you could maybe get around it, but you don't stop and get to adjust to the defense or call a completely different player. And I think it's an amazing combination of being able to play as an individual and as a team, right? So like you have to beat your defender on your route, but you're also timing it with your other teammates, with the quarterback. So I think the strategy behind flag football, and it's also, it's a little bit of an art to it, right? And how you call the plays and how people run the route. So I think it's kind of that combination of strategy, art, and just the speed of play, right? It doesn't, you stop each play, but it's pretty quick moving game, which I enjoy.
Yeah. And keeping with you, Britt, Grace touched on it earlier, travel. Now, doing this, I obviously did my research and I've seen that you guys have played in some really cool places, but this kind of opportunity to play in a number of different countries isn't something that anyone can say they've done, just off the back of playing any other kind of sport. But you guys have had that exposure where you've been able to play in said countries. Talk about the travel element, kicking off with you, Britt.
Sure. I mean, in the U.S. alone, the country itself is so big. And so in the variety of leagues that I've played in, you go from West Coast to East Coast to Midwest to the South. So I kind of started playing all over the country. You can pop over to Mexico, at least from San Diego. It's not super far, so you play there. And then, I played with the Coventry Cougars in Barcelona. I go to London every single month. We're going to be in the Netherlands next month, and then we're going to go to Ireland for the Euros. So, I mean, that's just probably 2 years of playing. I've been able to go to all of those places, and I just wouldn't either have the opportunity or take the opportunity to go to some of these locations. And you're doing it with friends, and you're also doing it to play sport. Like, you can't get much of a better combination than that.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say when you're playing the sport that you love and you have so much fun with and you play with your friends, being able to add travel onto the back of that kind of tops, puts the cherry on the cake. It doesn't kind of beat that, right? Kellie, you feel the same way?
Yeah, it's crazy where the sport has taken me. My first ever trip with flag football, I was 10. I went to Milan. And then since then, we've been to America, Germany, France, Israel, like so many places. And because we're like best friends as well, we're always like, let's have a few days before, let's have a few days extra. So we just spend so much time together, and we want to go, we want to compete, but we get to see the world together as well, and we just have so much fun. And I just think it's the same. You can't beat that. You get all these experiences that come along with it, and you don't always get that in a lot of other sports. And you make friends sort of like all across the globe, and you keep in touch, you're on Instagram, and then you're invited to other tournaments. I mean, not quite as lucky as Britt, we can just pop to Mexico, but Europe, which is incredible.
And Grace, is that you do that with both club and country?
Yeah, so the first one I did with country was Israel, which was amazing because it's not somewhere I would ever have on my bucket list.
Yeah.
But we did a couple of days before, and it was really good. And then a lot of it's been Europe then. So a lot of the places Kellie's mentioned, we're always in the same country. But it's really good. You get to, like Kellie said, meet other people from different countries, different cultures, and see the way that they play. Different countries have different playing styles, so it's always good to adopt that, watch different games. So it's really interesting with the travel side as well.
So we know how big flag football is right now, in particular women playing flag football. The number just continues to go up and up and up. I think it's about 20 million people that play in over 100 countries right now. But obviously, with everything, there are highs and there are lows. And I want to know if there's any obstacles you guys have faced playing the sport. Now, Kellie, you've been quite prominent in promoting the fact that I think you suffer with endometriosis, which is something that a lot of women have and not everybody speaks about. And I think, and agreed with you, it's quite important that we shed some light on that. So, I mean, I'm going to open the floor to you and just if you want to touch on that aspect and how that affects you playing the game as well, because it's only right that we raise the awareness.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for being so open to raise the awareness. It's actually Endometriosis Awareness Month throughout March. So I think I've been trying to really sort of share my experiences across like my platform and through my friends and things like that. It's something I've suffered with since I was 11, but it actually took me 11 years to get a diagnosis. And I've really, really struggled with it sort of physically and mentally, and it's not something that's kind of well known, and because it can be related to your menstrual cycle, it has sort of been a taboo subject. So I think the fact that like Leah Williamson, the Lionesses captain, actually suffers, and she's come out recently to say that, and I think it's so important that these figures show to people, it is normal. Women suffer with this every single day, and being an athlete, it is very hard because that when you're on your having your menstrual cycle, your performance in sport is lower anyway. But having it where you're physically can't get out of bed and it genuinely is really debilitating, it is hard because you don't have that energy to physically go and do what you want to do. But then you're not going to go and perform the way you want to, and it's really frustrating. And there's been times where I just turn up and I'm like, I cry because I'm like, I can't do what I know what I would normally be able to do. And I know I'm not the only one that suffers. It's obviously a problem throughout so many different females. It affects 1 in 10, and I mean at GB we're a squad of 15, so there's a chance that it's not just me that suffers with it. There's other people that might not have had a diagnosis yet. I think it's so important to share that you're not alone, and the research out there really needs to be done. And Grace actually shared with me an amazing podcast recently where Lucy Bronze, also from the Lionesses, did a podcast with a few of the football players where they were talking about it and saying, actually you're more prone to injuries. And I think that kind of side of things does need to be taken into account, and we need to find a way where we can keep ourselves healthy, but be able to talk about it and be comfortable sharing our experiences, because it is hard.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think first and foremost, thank you for sharing your story. I'm aware there's a few people in my circle who I know who suffer from it too. And the theme that I get is it's just not spoken about enough. And you touched on it there. It seems like people either find it as a taboo subject or they don't want to touch on it. But as an athlete, these things affect your performance, just like you said. And it's something that needs to be, in this day and age, we should have a way where we can either adapt the sport into when you have your menstrual cycles or people going through such a thing. And so there should be a way where we can help in this day and age. And I have no doubt that we will get to that point. But before we get to that point, I think more people have to talk about it. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. So thank you for sharing that story. It is really important that we get that out there. No, you're welcome. People like Leah and the Lionesses who are sharing their story too. It's great because it gives other young girls and people who suffer with the same thing someone who they can look at and say, well, look, they have the same thing and they're speaking about it. So it's completely normal for us to do so. Grace, have you suffered any kind of challenges in playing the sport?
Um, Slightly different, really. That more setbacks.
Okay.
When I first trialed for the GB squad, that I didn't make the team, and that was really difficult for me to deal with. I'd worked really hard to get there, and it was a huge setback for me, and I had to really kind of work through that and push through the want to give up the sport, really, and keep going with it. So kind of but it was a huge kind of obstacle for me to carry on and push past.
Well, I will say this. You've obviously overcome that obstacle and you've gone on to win, is it 8 national championships, I believe? Is that right?
Yeah, we're on number 8 now for club.
Well. You've done very, very well. Britt, what about yourself? Any obstacles or setbacks or things you've had to overcome?
I think it's first, kind of like I mentioned earlier, accessibility. When I first started, again, I didn't get to play when I was younger, and I'm just a tad bit older than my teammates here on the call, but it wasn't accessible to me. So I think that was the hard part, just finding leagues. And when I did start, I had to start in a co-ed league, which was fine. There was a lot of support, but there was also a lot of, women don't play football. So how do you know how to play football, right? And, if you're just put at rusher or, you're playing receiver or something, yes, you can catch a ball, you can learn a route, but wanting to play quarterback, I think there was even a little bit more of, well, can you throw that far, right? And, I still hear criticisms on that, and that's fine. I'll take that. But then do you understand play calling, and do you understand strategy? And, and again, I had a lot of supportive people, but I also had some where you could tell they didn't trust you to be quarterback, or they just assumed you kind of didn't know how to play because you couldn't really play football, from the ages that I was at and the access I had. So I think that's probably the biggest obstacle, and all you can do is go out there and play. And when they start seeing you throw the ball, or when you actually call some play concept and they're like, oh, wow, that actually worked. That's the only way that you're going to show them that you understand it. And it was important to be open to learning to those who were supportive, because I hadn't played, right? I did have to learn it.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you play. I've seen some of your highlights, and you can play. So I've seen them. So I played contact football. I played for 11 years. I played as a running back. And before that, I played rugby. So it's always been the contact element. So one thing I've noticed is, obviously we've got the Women's BAFA Football League, which it's quite recent, I'd say, because it didn't exist so many years ago in comparison to the men's anyway. Is there anything you guys can think of as to why it seems that there are more women and girls who play flag football than there are who play contact? Anything in particular that might stick out? Obviously, you've got the contact element, but I mean, technically, you do play flag, but there is some element of contact involved as well, be it intentional or not. And I know some women who play on men's teams too. Plenty of women who play on men's teams, but there is a higher number of women that play flag than they do contact. Is there anything you can think of as to why that might be?
I know for me, I've been asked to play contact, and I think I'm maybe 5'4" if I put my hair in a high enough ponytail, and don't weigh a ton. And so I think that I personally do have a little bit of a fear if I get nailed, like I'm not getting back up, right? So I definitely think that is an aspect of it, Okay. I've played eights contact, which isn't tackle, but you had a lot of tackle women in that division, and the size of them compared to me and strength of them is, I'm just going to call it, they're stronger, they're bigger, they're taller. So I think there's an interest there, but I think the physical part has to do with it, and injuries. I also think the accessibility and the cost of flag is a bit easier, right? You basically need a set of flags in a football to play. You don't need pads. You don't need blockers. You don't need things like that. So those would probably be two primary reasons why I could think of.
Kellie, same sort of thing or a different aspect?
Yeah, me and Grace were actually talking about this earlier, and we were saying like the accessibility and the cost to playing contact in comparison to playing flag football. And I think there's a lot more access to flag football. I think contact's probably more well known, but when you actually sort of like get into the flag circle, there are teams everywhere. And there's a lot of university leagues, so a lot of women's teams in flag actually come from university, which obviously will help spread the awareness. And I know a few of the universities have kitted sides, but I'd say they're probably maybe a bit fewer than what the flag is, and probably maybe more popular because of, like Britt says, the contact side of things.
Yeah. Grace, I guess similar sort of story because you had a conversation with Kellie.
Yeah, similar. And I think as well, you need a lot less players to play flag. You haven't got to try and find a whole bunch of people that are accepting to get hit. So I think that makes it a lot easier. You could really do it with 5 people in a park. So it is definitely that accessibility level.
The point about access and being a low barrier to entry is something that I spoke with Chase Claypool about at the launch event for the NFL girls flag league with the Jets and the Bears, and that's one thing that I said to him, and he said pretty much, yeah. I mean, and you've all mentioned the same thing. Contact sport does require a bit more in terms of having to fund the kit, which obviously isn't cheap, and obviously registration and things like that. And you mentioned it, Britt. You just need a ball, flags, and maybe between 5 and 7, 10 people, and you're good to go. So that makes a lot of sense in terms of why you do see those numbers differ between flag and contact football. Now, Britt, you're a Packers fan.
I am.
And you actually played in the halftime game between the Packers and the Giants.
I did.
Talk to me what that was like.
Blacked out a little bit, to be fair. But it was phenomenal. First of all, like just to be there, right, at a game in the UK, and an NFL game in the UK, where you're so used to it just being kind of an American league. That was amazing. And B, we just were under the tunnel, waiting to go out. I'm trying to warm up my arm in this like tiny little tunnel that everyone's walking through, and people are coming and going, and there's like actors and players, and I'm just kind of like in awe. But and then the next thing I know, I'm talking to somebody and they're like, all right, let's go. And we just run out of this tunnel. And I thought everybody would be getting food and drinks and the stadium would be, a fourth full. And that was not the case. There were quite a few people still in the stands. And I actually stood there waiting for a whistle, like to start the game. And there was no whistle. They were just like, go. So, we just got a quick play in to get everybody going. And after that, it was just like, it was surreal. It was so quick, but people were cheering and people were yelling. And I honestly do think I blacked out a little bit, because the next thing I know, they're like, okay, get off the field. And as we were headed off the field, a lot of people had actually come down to like the front seats and were standing like by the tunnel at the front and just like truly making eye contact and applauding, which was amazing support. And then when we were going back to our seats, some of us had GB gear on. The amount of people that came up to us and were just like, wow, that was amazing. Like, that was so cool. A couple were like, why do you have an American accent? So I had to explain that. But I honestly would say real quick, my favorite part was as we were down in the locker room, as we were headed into the locker room to get changed, they were bringing out some of the youth players that had either won a flag championship or something like that. And there were 2 girls and about 6 boys. And their parents were with them, and they stopped us, and the dad grabbed the 2 girls, and he was like, these are the GB women flag people, like they play for the national team. And they were so nervous and they were so shy, but you could tell they were so excited. And then one of the gals said something to her dad, and they asked if they could take a photo with us. And to me, honestly, like that was one of my favorite parts, because I had been that little girl looking at, soccer players normally, like, wow, these girls are amazing. And B, them not even knowing that we were a team, like that there was actually the national team to work up towards, was probably one of the most memorable moments, because you think, what am I working towards sometimes when you're playing the sport? And now you can play at a national level. And they were just absolutely like enthralled. And even the boys were like, can we take a photo too? So that was one of my probably favorite parts of that experience, for sure.
And an amazing experience, to say the least, as well. I mean, being a Packers fan, number 1, playing in front of Packers fans, number 2.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not something you're going to forget. And if anything, it kind of goes to show that how far the sport is going in terms of now we're having flag people play flag at halftime at the London games. And now we've done it once. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the thing moving forward. So, you want to get that arm ready, because you might get the call up for the next game too. We're going to start to wind down the show, but before we do that, I want to talk about sporting inspirations. So, Kellie, who's your number one sporting inspiration or someone that you've looked up to during your career?
It's kind of hard because, like, obviously, when you're younger, I played so many different sports and things like that, and there wasn't always, like, for example, now the Lionesses, straight away I'd say, like, Leah Williamson, Ella Toone, like, I think they're amazing and what they've achieved are amazing. But I think for me, I grew up and, like, my family were a rugby family, and my dad played rugby until he was 38, and my sister is 2 years older than me, and I always saw her, you know, playing sport and achieving in sport. So for me, it was kind of more like homegrown inspiration, and, like, my sister was doing it, so I wanted to do it. And, you know, my dad played sport until he was older, so I want to play sport, and it was kind of that side of it for me.
I love that. Big up to your family for inspiring you to keep going, because obviously it's paid off, right? Grace, yourself?
Yeah, similar really. I think there's a lot more role models out there now for the younger children to kind of aspire towards. When I was younger, a lot of it was family pushed me into playing sport, and I just kind of fell into it and loved it. And I used to love football. I used to play football. So it was always like the male players that I used to look up to. So I do think it's nice now that there are more female role models out there for people to kind of, like I say, aspire to be towards as they grow up. But mine was definitely more family pushing me to do it and just loving it.
Yeah. Now, Britt, I'm going to ask you the same question. I'm going to have a guess and say that your dad played a big role in your sporting life, because I know how close you were with him. You used to follow him around, I believe, to games or practices, and obviously you've now playing the sport for a big part of your life and career. So talk to me about your inspirations.
Yeah, I mean, my dad definitely was part of it, and my mom and sister. I mean, they would just travel, like, go wherever they could to support us, and so having that support is huge, right? Because I didn't have to always leave my family. They were always there. They supported whatever sport I wanted to play. I did follow around my dad to most soccer fields as he would coach. So he definitely kept me in the sport and, you know, kept me ingrained in wanting to coach and continue to play as long as I can. But I do agree with Kellie and Grace that there are a lot more role models. Like, I looked up to Mia Hamm in the U.S. women's soccer team since, you know, I was little, and now being a part of GB and watching the Lionesses win Euros and hearing, you know, their stories of trying to get visibility, right? Trying to get people in seats. Like, they felt kind of like, you know, no one's at the beginning. And now you look at them and they've won the Euros and they're all over the place. They're super visible, and they've had hands in initiatives about getting PE to grow and access to soccer. And I think our GB team is a little bit like that, right? We're trying to build more visibility. We're trying to get people to kind of buy into that we are professional athletes, like we are GB's national team. And so I hope that whoever kind of comes after us keeps that going, because that was an inspiration for me to even at my age watch them win and see what they've been able to do in just like that short of time. So I would say started with family, started with Mia Hamm, and continues to be teams like the Lionesses and the U.S. women too soccer team, and their equal pay argument, you know, fight and everything is also a huge inspiration. So combination.
Absolutely. But in the same way that you guys have talked about your inspirations when you were younger and now, without you realizing, or maybe you do realize, the three of you, all the ladies that play flag football, all the women that just are out and about doing everything with their life and doing things and achieving things, you guys are the inspiration for the next generation. You guys are the people that, you know, they're looking up to you guys and they're seeing what you guys are achieving. You're all wearing your GB tops. You're all wearing it with pride. You're playing internationally. You're playing in front of thousands of people in stadiums. Like, you guys, whether you know it or not, are the inspiration for the next generation. So a big prop to you guys for doing what you're doing. You're proudly flying that flag. And who knows, one day you're probably going to have someone who's going to say, you know, I saw Britt play, I saw Kellie play, I saw Grace play, and that's the reason why I'm playing today. So you never know who you're going to inspire, so you've got to keep going all the way. Last but not least, I'm going to take you back in time a little bit. Now, I don't know when you guys joined GB, so you can fill in for me here, but 2017, GB win the bronze medal, right? 34-6 against Finland. So this is the IFAF European Championships. And you take the bronze medal. 2019, GB fall to Spain in the silver game, in the gold medal game, 28-14. I can see Kellie nodding her head there. She knows where I'm going with this one. That leaves me to say 2023, we're in Ireland. We're in Limerick, I believe it is. I think it's time to grab the gold. What do you guys think?
100%.
It's only right. It's only right. I mean, if you look at the pattern, 2017 bronze, 2019 silver, now is the time to go and grab that gold without a doubt. I mean, I've got all the faith in the world that you guys can do it. Collectively, you do so much, you win so much, you've got the team chemistry. I can feel it through the screen. And I wanted to end with that just because it's a big tournament coming up. I know you guys have been training, obviously, and looking back at the history of what you guys have achieved, the GB women's have achieved, it's lining up pretty well for you guys to close in and take that gold. So, like, no pressure, but, you know, it's right there for you guys to take. Before we close, how are you guys feeling about the tournament coming up in August?
Yeah, excited. Looking forward to it. Everyone's putting the work in now. We've got kind of a preempted tournament a little bit in April. And then it's everyone's full steam ahead. Like you say, gold is our aim. We have nothing less in our minds. So
nice.
We'll when we get there in August, we'll show you our medal.
Oh, absolutely. I'll be waiting. Kelly, how you feeling?
Yes, I did my first Euros with GB in 2015 in Madrid. And then obviously I did Denmark in 2017 and Israel in 2019. So I've kind of been on that process of like, I want to be first, gold. We're going to do it. We've got some points to prove and some revenge to take, but this year's the year. We're ready.
I love that. Yeah, that's it. All the way. And Britt?
Yeah, I'm kind of opposite of Kelly, I guess. This will be my first. So I joined right before, unfortunately, we weren't able or permitted to go to Israel. So I guess we've kind of been putting in the work, but haven't had that chance to play a major tournament. I haven't had a chance to play a major tournament with these girls. So I'm beyond excited and beyond ready and trying to do everything I can from over here and every time I get to the UK to get to that point. So extremely excited. Absolutely, yeah.
And with that brings us to the end of an amazing episode. I'm inspired. Heck, I might go and get my cleats and take up the sport again. Like, I just want to go and play now.
Do it.
But I mean,
You should.
I might just do it. Britt, Kelly, Grace, it's been an absolute pleasure. Hey, it depends how far. How quickly can I get there from Kent? I mean, if it's not too far, I'll join. You know, you ain't gonna ask me twice. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed this one, and I knew I would. For people watching, I hope you've taken away something from this episode, whether it be going through difficulties or overcoming obstacles, or achieving things in your life, be it sport or otherwise. You've got three amazing ladies here who are proudly doing that whilst flying the flag for GB. So all the best of luck in the tournament coming up in August. You'll have the whole of the country behind you guys. Have anyone got any shout outs or any last words? Anyone you wanna big up?
Oh God, the whole team. All of us have got to go and do it in August. So shout out to the whole team and the coaching staff.
And to you, thank you for bringing us on, and all the other individuals that kind of try and share our content, share us, bring us on, give us some visibility. I mean, that's huge. So you're a part of whatever we end up being able to do too. So thank you so much for having us.
More than welcome. Absolutely more than welcome.
Shout out to all the younger girls that want to get involved, want to play sport, whether it be flag football or something else. Go out there, do it. I'm sure you'll achieve great things.
Amazing. And with that, I've been George from Georgeonsports with Brittany, Kelly and Grace, GB flag warriors. They're playing the sport, they're getting it done, and they're achieving things over and over and over and again. So I hope you guys have loved this episode. Stay tuned, and hopefully when we catch up with the girls next, they'll have that gold medal around their necks and we'll be able to talk all about the tournament. But until then, stay tuned and keep it locked for more.